Nitro K9, real dog training.
Greetings, dog lovers everywhere.
That's Stephanie Welch, a Nitro K9 apprentice, welcoming you to the show. Stephanie's our guest today on Nitro K9's Real Dog Training. Real Dog Training is based on the methods, techniques, and experiences of Steve Walter, the owner and lead trainer of Nitro K9. I'm your host, Dave Tucker, and thanks for joining us today. Based right here in Seattle, Steve has developed a worldwide following because of the effectiveness of the techniques that he teaches. Today we'll be talking with Stephanie and finding out more about what it's like to be an apprentice for Nitro K9. Thanks to all of you who've been listening to this podcast and sharing the word. We'd like to give a special shout out to Jeff Dolphin in Rockford, Illinois, and his dog fan. Thanks for writing in, Jeff. Glad you did. Steve loves to hear from his listeners, and he's very quick to respond, so feel free to drop us a line. So, Stephanie, I understand that before you trained dogs, you trained horses as well. So what's the difference between training a horse versus training a dog?
The mindset is very similar. You want to ask the dog to do something before you give them a correction. And it's that whole mindset super similar to what I used to do. So it was pretty easy once Steve gave me the foundation of what to do. It clicked really right away. So I was able to move forward pretty quickly in training Thor, my Malinois. But I would say the biggest difference is, you're not sitting on the animal. So you have to think about everything you're doing, right? Like your muscles contracting affect them. Even the smallest little things can affect the animal. When you're with a dog, it does matter how you're feeling. Like if you're nervous, the dog's going to be nervous. And it's the same thing with horses. So there's a lot that does overlap. It's just different when you're sitting on them versus next to them is the one part that's kind of different.
So how did you meet Steve, and how did you get involved with Nitro K9?
Well, I never really was into dog training until I met him with my personal dog, Tucker. He was acting out at the barn that I lived at and worked at, and he had bit two of the owners, and it was just kind of out of the blue. He had been returned to the shelter a couple times, and I knew he was scared, but I didn't know how to deal with it, right? I'm like, I know how to train horses, but I don't know how to train dogs. So I looked up dog trainers in the area that were good with aggression, and Steve, of course, is the first one that comes up. And he helped me out with Tucker, and fast forward a couple months ago, I went to see him because I have a Belgian Malinois. I knew him, and I was like, I also know he has Malinois and Dutch Shepherd, and he's the guy to go to. I know that he can make Thor, my Malinois, the best Malinois he can be because he was being leash reactive, but I knew he's so nice, but I was like, I know there's a way that I can get him to stop biting his leash and acting like an idiot when he sees a dog. So that rekindled our relationship. And yeah, basically Steve one day was like, you should work for me and, quit doing the civil engineering thing. I was like, well, I already did that one time. I quit engineering to go be a horse trainer.
So what's it like to work at Nitro K9?
Right now, I see Steve the most because I'm like half and half. I have my own clients, and then I also still apprentice with Steve as much as I can to further myself on. We're there to train the dog, but we don't want to make the clients feel really burdened and how it's really daunting. We want them to have fun and not take it so seriously that they feel so pressured, but seriously enough that, if they have an aggressive dog, they need to practice and need to put in the work. But we get a lot of pretty awesome clients. They're just trying to have their pet behave and they don't know how, and they're fun and they're easy to talk to.
Yeah, Steve speaks really highly of his client base. He's really happy with the folks he works with. Now, I suppose it's from your personal experience with your own dogs, but I've heard you say you have an interest in dogs who are experiencing fear.
I think the ones that are, it's pretty common, but the ones that are fearful are super interesting to me. The clients come to us in the evals and they're like, my dog's aggressive, they've bitten people and blah, blah, blah. But I would say 95% of the time, the dogs are just scared. And so those are the most interesting ones to me because then you get to see how the dog becomes more confident in the training and then starts to relax more. So that was my first dog, Tucker. He was scared of the people entering into our home, which is why he bit them. As I started training with Steve, Tucker began to become more confident, and now he's, for the most part, pretty safe to be around for like anyone. There's times where you always have to be careful, and there's like triggers with any dog. We always tell people, we'll do our best, but it might never go away. And Tucker is one of those instances where, there are certain men that just trigger his fear and he'll just bark at them. And then I have to correct him. And there we go. We're moving on with our lives. But for the most part, I'd say like 99% of that, he's pretty calm as long as I'm there and he feels safe with me because he knows that I'm there to protect him. So that's the most interesting thing to me, is to see how dogs become fearful because their handlers don't know how to lead, and then they feel scared and they lash out. And to teach people that is awesome, because then they don't feel helpless. They're like, oh wow, my dog's just scared. They're not just with no hope.
Now, I know you had some issues with Thor. How was that experience?
I've gone through a lot with Thor. Not necessarily like through bad and ugly, but he was very, very leash reactive towards other dogs. And we couldn't, like my boyfriend and I couldn't figure out how to get him to stop biting on the leash. He would literally just play tug of war with the leash. He would heel nicely. Like I used what I was taught with Tucker on Thor, but they're very different dogs. Tucker is the fearful, no drive. He was really easy to train. Soft dog, one little pop on the prong collar, and he was like, oh, okay, I got you. But Thor, he's a higher drive dog. Malinois are meant to have high drive. And he's a little bit of a tougher dude. So if I corrected him, he would have an attitude back about it. That part I wasn't used to. I mean, I knew how to tell a horse, no, you don't get to try to kick me, or no, you don't get to try to bite me and all that. It's not like I was soft with Thor, but I couldn't figure out how to get him to stop biting his leash. Because once you took the leash away, it's like, well, I can't correct you. So that was a tough one for me. So working with Steve with that, and now that we've broken through that, and Thor is a pretty reliable off-leash healing dog, it's mind-blowing to me. And it didn't even take that long, honestly. I mean, I started taking lessons with Steve, I think back in February or March. I mean, it hasn't even been a year, and I'm already teaching my dog how to heel backwards. So,
Wow.
well, when you know the tools and then you're addicted to training like I am, you're like, well, what's next? What can I do now? What can I make this do? And then, Thor's Nitro's demo dog. So now we're like, okay, well, what should we make him do now so we can show off and make him look great? And
As Stephanie mentioned, Thor is a Nitro K9 demo dog, and you can see his photo on the Nitro K9 webpage, nitrok9.com, as well as the Nitro K9 Instagram and Facebook page.
I think that's my biggest accomplishment because, Tucker was just a pretty easy dog to train, that when I left the horse world, I wanted to have a dog that I could do anything I wanted with. And that's why we went the Malinois route. And so it's been nice breaking through, because we knew he was always capable of so much because he's such a great dog. But Steve gave us the tools to really break through to his potential. So I think that's been the most awesome thing, is just, being able to do whatever we want. I mean, he's only 2 years old, and we have
Wow.
such a long life to live with him. It's like amazing to think about all the things we're going to be able to do with him. It's so great to like look back and be like, it didn't even take that long. We just practiced every day for like 45 minutes.
I understand you've had quite a bit of success with one of your clients. I believe it's a border collie.
Yeah. She lives in downtown Seattle, and her father, the client, he works in Amazon. And he doesn't have a car. So he walks her to work every day. And the dog was having leash reactivity problems. I'm like, all right, well, the biggest thing is that we stop the leash reactivity, because clearly your walks to and from work every day are probably miserable. She's snapping at bicycles and other dogs. And like, I would dread that half a mile walk every day.
Yeah.
So we've been working through that, and she's a pretty sensitive dog, so it hasn't taken too much to snap her out of it, but a lot of it's teaching the person. So I'd say that 75 to 80% of all of it is just teaching the human to train the dog, which is, we're teaching people to figure out how to do the right correction or communicate with their dog in a way that their dog understands. And that can sometimes take a little time.
That's the harder one of the two to train, right?
Yeah.
So not only do you have dogs and not only do you train dogs, but you foster dogs as well. What's that like? How did you get involved with the Wolf Project?
After we got Thor, I started to learn more and more about the Malinois breed and how many people are getting them and then not keeping them. So they're actually showing up in shelters more than any dog I see now. Like, the mixed breeds show up a lot, but they're like a nice purebred dog is showing up in shelters over and over again in Southern California. Someone that I also knew had a Malinois, she was like, "Oh yeah, I foster for Wolf Project." And I was like, "Oh, okay, I'll look that up."
Now, just to make sure our listeners know, the Wolf Project, WOOF, that's wolfproject.org, is the West Coast Belgian Malinois Rescue and Adoption Organization. It's a 501c3 serving California, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho and Nevada. You can get more information at wolfproject.org. Sorry to interrupt there, Stephanie. Go ahead.
Last December, I got my first Wolf Project Malinois, and she was so great. She was like a 40-pound Malinois. She was a little emaciated and, just needed a little food and love, and she was like the perfect pet. So most of the Mals that I get are like pet quality, so they're not working dog. I mean, some of them will get into dock diving or search and rescue, but they're never really into bite work. Occasionally you get a protection dog, like one of the ones that Steve trained, Henry, he's a Wolf Project dog and he does protection work, but it's mostly dogs that are just good pets. I'm on my 5th foster and I just started in December. So it hasn't even been a year. Yeah, we get them like every 2 months, I guess, or so. We get one. Your Wolf Project's great. They take the necessary precautions to go do evaluations of our dogs before they pull them from the shelter to make sure the fosters can actually handle them because, most of them are just owners of other Malinois. They're not dog trainers. I mean, I'm one of the more experienced fosters that Wolf has. And so they want to make sure they're going to mesh into the families well. So a lot of people have 2 or 3 dogs and they want to make sure they got dog friendly dogs and that they'll be pretty easy to rehab and get up for adoption. There have been more Malinois coming out this past year than I think Wolf's ever seen. So it's kind of sad because there's only so many fosters and there's only so many spaces, but you save as many as you can. And it's crazy. Just, I don't get how people don't research the breed. Most people don't even know what a Belgian Malinois is, let alone like, why would you go and get a puppy and then dump it at the shelters beyond me?
I've heard there are a lot of people that will buy a dog without knowing what all's involved. They hear it's a really cool dog, and of course, the Belgian Malinois is a beautiful dog, but they have no idea the work that it takes to integrate that dog into your family.
It's crazy. And, I know that the dumping of what is considered a flat dog has been a thing for a long time. Like I've talked to Steve about it, and if a dog is flat, which means they don't have any bite drive, because Malinois are supposed to be police dogs. They're supposed to be protection dogs. That's essentially what they've become. If someone gets a dog and then their dog shows no bite drive, sometimes they just get rid of them and they don't even,
Wow.
they just move on to the next dog. My biggest thing with that is it just shows that the dog is just a piece of meat. It's not even like it. I love when I see people who honestly will say, hey, this dog is not going to fit my lifestyle. I will rehome it for $200 and hold on to it till it finds the home it needs. I've seen that a couple of times. And that's cool. The dog's trained, the dog can do dock diving, it can do other things, but a lot of people that have Malinois are into, the dog sports, the IPO, the Schutzen, they're into that. And so you need to have some sort of bite drive to do those sports.
Okay.
And so most of the dogs I've had have had no tug drive. I put a tug in their face and they are like, oh, is it a chew toy? They don't have that. Like my Malinois right now, she's a little bit more on the fearful side. Super sweet dog, lovely, loves to play fetch. But I put a tug in her face and she thought I was going to hit her with it. She actually was scared. If I put a tug in front of Thor's face, he's like ready to eat my hand because he's so excited. Like I have to make sure I hold the tug in a certain way so that when he jumps to bite it, I don't get hurt.
Right.
So it's funny how, you have one breed, but each of them is so different. Anyway, I got into it because I saw that the breed was getting destroyed, and it was breaking my heart because, Thor has made such an impact on our lives. He's been such a joy. He's made our lives so much better. And I wanted to bring that to some other people. So people are willing to put the work in to exercise the dog. They deserve a pet Malinois. I mean, they're great. They're structurally sound. You're not going to have any issues with hips like some of the show line German Shepherds. And then you're going to get a similar dog. Yeah, it's been a lifestyle change for sure because 3 dogs is way different than 2, but it's given me a good purpose, I'd say. It's the same reason why I really like dog training and I like working with the clients rather than doing the hands-off dog training. It's like you're really making a difference in these people's lives. They're struggling with their dog. A lot of the people that come to Steve for these evals, they have lost a lot of hope. They've gone to several different trainers and they've seen no results. And then we put a prong collar on them and boom, they're walking in a heel. Usually what happens if I'm there, Steve will hand the dog to me. I'll train the dog while Steve talks to the client and talks them through what I'm doing. And then, he's teaching them that their dog's not aggressive, their dog's scared, or, their dog is doing this because of this. It's nice to see when people have that sigh of relief, like, oh, okay, my dog isn't a bad dog.
And that's one of the great things that Nitro K9 gives its clients is that ability to create the bond between the handler and the dog that leads to such a happy relationship. Well, it looks like we've come to the end of the show. Thanks so much, Stephanie, for being here with us. We've really enjoyed hearing your experiences.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Dave.
Thanks for listening to Real Dog Training. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please pass the word around. Let your friends know, especially those who are interested in dogs and training. If you've got a question for Steve, go to nitrok9.com and click on the Contact tab at the top right corner. And type in your question. Make sure that you let Steve know you're a listener to the podcast because he's really excited about that. I'm your host, Dave Tucker, with Nitro K9 apprentice Stephanie Welch, reminding you that
a trained dog is a happy dog, and at the other end of that leash is a happy dog lover.
Nitro K9, real dog training.
For more information, go to nitrok9.com. Nitro K9 was not recorded before a live studio audience.